Welcome or welcome back to my channel. My name is Ashley and I'm here to talk about books. Hello, I hope everyone had a wonderful Christmas and I hope you guys got some good books this year. I know I did. So in today's video, we will be doing my Q4 of 2025 wrap up. I think I'm going to be having a separate video talking about like my full year and like the stats for the whole year, because a girl like me who likes numbers has to do like a yearly video as well, right? Today we will just be focusing on Q4, so October, November, December of 2025. And then I think my next video might be the full year of 2025, so stay tuned for that. First, we will be getting into my stats. So of course, if you're not interested in that, this video will be timestamped so that you can jump ahead to where I talk about the actual books. But for those who like numbers, this part's for you. So for Q4 of 2025, I read 25 books, which is totaling 6,884 pages. I read the most books in October because I did a horror novella reading vlog. So of course that one was just a little bit higher, but for the most part, it was pretty even across the months. I'm a little bit surprised that I read so many books in December. I definitely was expecting it to be a lot less. This month, with me being so busy, I was listening to a lot of audiobooks. So physical books, I had 14, and then audiobooks was 11, which is more than it usually is. And then I had 8 on my Kindle. Some of these audiobooks, again, I did read physical and Kindle, but most of those audiobooks were just audio. Here's my genre breakdown. Horror, I read 13, thriller 10, romance 1, and litfic 1. This does not surprise me. For one, Halloween is in Q4, so of course I'm reading less romance and litfic, but my taste tends to lean a little darker anyways, and I've been surprising myself this year by having more romance and litfic in these stats. So this is pretty much to be expected for me. And then here are my star ratings. So Q4 was pretty good to me. My ratings tend to lean a little bit heavier on the higher side of a 5-star rating scale, and I love that for me. Most of them were 3 stars. That is the highest one that we have, which it's better than half. Like 2.5 is middle of the road. It was just fine. 3 stars is like a little bit above that, but probably not memorable. Loving those 4-star ratings, and 5 stars, that is at 4. I had 4 5-star reads. I do remember in this quarter reading like a bunch of 4 to 5-star books back to back, which I'm so thankful for. But then I was like, wow, when I come across my next like mediocre book, I feel like that one is going to get slammed by me because of how good everything else has been. I really reignited why I love to read so much, and these stats can kind of show that to you guys. Like, I love to read. I love a good book. And I am absolutely so happy to look back and see how much I'm enjoying reading this last quarter. That's amazing. Now we're going to be getting into the books. I'm not going to be talking about all of the books that I read. I'm just going to be talking about 3 categories. So most disappointing, most surprising, and highest rated. First off, I would like to say that I realized in this quarter, I'm not really a dark academia type of person. I don't really enjoy like dark academia. These are a couple of the books that I read in this quarter that I really didn't like, and solidified for me why I feel that way. One of these was a DNF. That was Daphne, because I really just was not going to enjoy it, and I knew I was going to give it a low rating. But then I also read In My Dreams I Hold a Knife, which has been on my TBR for a very long time. And I finally got to it for the Buzzword cover and title challenge, which the prompts for October was to read a book with a weapon on the cover, and then to read a book that has like violent words in the title. So I figured knife would count. So I just read this book for both prompts, and I feel like this really solidified for me that I just don't think that I'm a dark academia reader. But some of the more specific books that I wanted to talk about and give you guys like a review on, I have 2 picked out for this category. One of which is Blue Sisters by Coco Mellers. This was one of the books that I read in October, and listen, this one was highly anticipated for me. It has a lot of themes that I tend to gravitate towards in my literary fiction / like sad books, and I was so disappointed. I'm not going to say this is like a horrible book, but it just wasn't a book for me. I don't think that I liked it as much as I thought I was going to. It screams Ashley. Like, this book screams me and my taste. We have aspects of grief, strong sisterhood relationships. This one is a very character-driven storyline, and I struggled so hard to get through it. This book is about 4 sisters who grew up with like not the best childhood. They really had each other to lean on, and then when they became adults, they all went down their own separate paths, but still kept like strong connections with each other individually. So it takes place like a year after one of the sisters passes away from a accidental drug overdose. The sister who passed away was Nikki, and she was the second to youngest. She had a lot of health problems. She had endometriosis. She really struggled with pain. So she was looking for a way to satiate her pain. As we know, women's health is not the best, and this book did a really good job at portraying that. And then the 3 sisters that are remaining are the characters who we flip through their points of view throughout the entirety of the novel. So we have the oldest sister, which is Avery. She's married, she's a lawyer, she is kind of like the image of responsibility for this family, but she also has a lot of inner demons that she struggles with silently, and she doesn't let everyone else know. So they kind of think that she really has a good head on her shoulders and that she has her life all together, but there's a lot that she just doesn't share. And then we have the other sister, Bonnie, who is like the middle child. She is a former boxer. She retired from her boxing career after a devastating loss, and now she's a bouncer at a club in LA in present day in this book. She's very tough. She has this like hard outer shell, and she has a really hard time getting in touch with her softer side, which is something that is very apparent throughout her chapters. She's also the one who found their sister Nikki when she was dying, so she also has that struggle to deal with as well. And then we have the youngest sister, which is Lucky, and Lucky was like Nikki's baby. Everyone always said that she was like Nikki's baby. They were really close, and even in their adulthood, I think the 2 of them were the ones that had like the strongest relationship. But Lucky is like the beautiful sister. She's very sought after. She's got the looks. She's a model. But she also has a lot of substance abuse issues of her own. She's one of those characters that kind of fell into a not so great crowd of people. She lives in Paris, and then she kind of like jumps around between New York and LA. She's one of those characters that to her, I feel like home wasn't so much a place, but more of like a person. Her sisters, for example, especially Nikki. So she struggles a lot with Nikki passing away, and that is something that is very clear and evident to the rest of the family. They know how badly she's struggling, and everybody's worried about her. So throughout the entirety of the novel, we're just following these 3 different points of views. These sisters who are very lost in their grief and their sadness. Realistically, they would have each other to lean on, but they've all gone down their own separate paths. So this story is really about them trying to like rekindle that familial connection. The main thing that's bringing them back together is Nikki's 1-year death anniversary, and also their parents, who they hardly have a relationship with, are trying to sell their apartment that they grew up in, which is where Nikki died, and like all of her belongings are there. So the sisters are trying to get together to kind of see what they want to do. Are they all on the same page? I will give credit where credit is due. Coco Mellers did write this book very beautifully. There's a lot of visceral emotions in here. I did read something saying that she herself was a recovered addict, so it seems like she's writing from personal experience, and I feel like that does come through in the writing. It's really like hit home when it comes to women's health, loss of a loved one, addiction, all of those things. Like, she did a really fantastic job with all of that. But this book is 400 pages, and I feel like for the most part it's all tell, not show. I struggled with that a lot, because I think if more time was put into the plot, and if we were able to kind of go back on the memories and see like what these sisters had together. We did get a little bit of that throughout the book, but it's not completely fleshed out. Like, you know that they had a hard childhood and that they really only had each other to rely on. But I feel like it would have really benefited if we could have gotten more of those scenes, like more childhood experiences, more of these sisters being close, instead of everything taking place after the fact when everything has fallen apart and we kind of can't connect with that feeling of loss because we're not really going through the motions like we would have if we had gotten more of that backstory and like more plot to it. Those are like my main criticisms of this book and why I didn't like it as much as I thought I was going to. I did end up giving this 3 stars, and while that is a pretty decent rating, I expected it to be much higher. So that's why it's showing up on most disappointing. And then the next book that we have to talk about is Bring Me Back by B.A. Paris. So this is a backlist book that was on my TBR because a lot of people were saying that it's got like one of the craziest twists and it's one of the most shocking thrillers that are out there. So when I saw it at the library, I just had to pick it up. The main characters in this book are Finn and Layla, and we start out in the past. They are on a road trip, they're traveling together. They stop at a gas station for a little pit stop to use like the restroom, get gas and all that stuff. But when Finn comes back out to the car, Layla's gone. She's completely disappeared and he doesn't know where she went. Since he was the last person who had seen her alive and he was also her boyfriend, he becomes like the main suspect. They couldn't really get any evidence on him. There was no body, there was no evidence of foul play. So he was never really charged with anything, and this kind of became like a cold case of a missing person. Now the second timeline is 10 years in the future. Finn is still seen as one of the main suspects, but he is now engaged to her sister, Ellen. These two have really connected over their shared like grief and loss over Layla. And now Finn and Layla's sister, Ellen, are engaged. They have a house together, they have a dog. As the wedding is approaching and it's just around the corner, strange things start to pop up suggesting that somebody might know something, and the truth about what happened to his long-lost lover might just be lurking right at his sight. So now Finn is stuck having to decide between moving forward with his new life and burying the past once and for all, or should he chase these clues, even if it meant that in the end, Layla will not be there waiting for him. I honestly found this to be kind of boring and cliched. It was written in 2018, so it is a backlist book. But if I had read it closer to its release date, I feel like my overall enjoyment of this one would have been a lot better. This is something that I'm seeing myself struggle a lot with lately reading these backlist thrillers, because there's a really high chance that I've already seen it done and that I've seen it done better. But I still hold out hope for my backlist TBR because sometimes they end up becoming all-time favorites. You just have to kind of sort them out and find the hidden gems. The thing about this one that really confused me though is that I've been seeing a lot of really high ratings for it recently, like recent discussions. So I was expecting a different experience overall. And since I read it in 2025, I'm landing on a 2-star for this book. On to my most surprising, and I do have one book in this category to discuss with you guys, and that is The Book of X by Sarah Rose Etter. So this is something that I'm finding to be really funny because last quarter I had another of those like really weird artsy metaphorical books as my most surprising, which was Night Bitch by Rachel Yoder. I don't know if it's like a timing thing or something with these really artsy stories where I just have to find some time where I can really dive deep into it and digest what the book is trying to say. But this is another book that I found really surprising. It's about this young girl named Cassie who inherits a very rare condition from her mother. She is born with her stomach and torso area literally being tied in a knot. So like imagine somebody's body with like their rib cage and everything, and then there's a knot, and then the rest of their body. That is how this condition appears. At this point in time, there's not a lot of research done on this condition, and it's super rare, and it seems to only happen to women. So of course, not top of the priority list, right? They live in a pretty rural area, and this part of the land has like a meat quarry on it, which is where her father and her brother work. They harvest the meat as their family's source of income. We follow Cassie in her childhood where she really struggles with her body image, her femininity, and she just wants to be accepted like most adolescent women do. Through the lens of this unsettling metaphor that really captures the psychological damage of being a woman in a society that's so obsessed with gender roles and spectacle. This is not a book that you read for comfort. This is a book that you read to feel something and to feel seen in ways that you never expected. Etter writes this character with such veracity and in a way that is so somber yet disturbingly poetic. I'll be honest with you guys, the reason that I found this book to be so surprising was because I was not expecting to like it. The only reason that I picked this one up is because I really needed an X for my A to Z challenge. And X proved to be one of the more complicated letters to fulfill. So when I was doing my research and I was trying to decide if this was the book that I was going to end up reading, I was seeing a ton of really divisive reviews. Like, a lot of people did not like it at all. And it's because the writing was really flowery and metaphorical, but the content was so gloomy. And this is not a book that is like no thoughts had empty. You just want to sit down and curl up with a cozy book. Not her. This is not the one. I just feel like I was fortunate enough to pick it up at a time where I had the time to sit down and really analyze all the symbolisms and dissect like the message that this book was trying to portray. So I feel like you need to be in a particular headspace for you to enjoy this one the way that it's meant to be enjoyed. And this sounds a little bit shallow, but another reason why I was so hesitant picking this book up is because I was not intrigued by the cover whatsoever. This pink cover that I have up on the screen for you guys here is the one that I like, and I didn't see it until after I read the book, but the cover that I had on my Kindle was this one, and I had no interest in reading this book. It does not look interesting to me. It looks like art, like what you would see at a museum. But now that I've read the book and looking back, I do appreciate this cover a little bit more. I still do prefer the pink one, of course, but yeah, I was having a hard time because the cover wasn't pulling me in either. So I ended up giving this book 4 stars, and while it's not one that I would recommend to anybody, it's one that I definitely don't think I will be forgetting about anytime soon. Moving on to my favorite part, talking about the highest rated books that I read in Q4. So I picked out 2 books to talk about in this category. The first one being The One by John Mars. I did finally read this book, and if you watched my Q3 update, you would know that this was a goal for me to read this book by the end of the year. I ended up doing a dedicated reading vlog for it in November, so I won't talk about this one too much since I do have an hour-long video on my channel, but I will go over the premise a little bit and kind of like my non-spoilery thoughts. John Mars is well loved by me and a ton of other thriller readers in the community, and this is one of his highest praised books, and it is not without reason. This takes place in a near distant future where scientists has figured out how to use DNA to match people with their one true love, biologically speaking. This world is very divisive in those who believe these matches to be complete baloney and the people who are hopeful to find their happily ever after. The caveat with that is that your DNA match could be anybody. There is no limitation on age, gender, relationship status, morals, deep, dark secrets. You send in your results and the person that you get matched with is the person that you get matched with. This is not Tinder. This is not like filtering out, I'm interested in men, I'm interested in women, I don't want to date anybody that's outside of this age range. Like, this is the distance that I'm looking for the people that I want to date. That's not how this is. Anybody in the world could be your DNA match, and it just is what it is. In this story, we follow 5 different matches as these situations unfold into complete and utter chaos. I was eating up these pages like it was the last book that I was ever going to read. This is so fast-paced. Of course, in John Mars fashion, each chapter ends on a cliffhanger where you're like, what the fuck? So yeah, this was so good, and it really did live up to the hype. I put this book off for so long because I tend to get lost with multiple points of view, so many characters. But in that video, I took notes and I told you guys everything. So if you're wanting a deep dive or you just want spoilers, I would highly recommend checking out that video. Earlier when I told you guys that I still hold out hope for these high praise backlist books, this next book that I'm about to talk about is a perfect example of why I continue adding them to my TBR. I'm going to tell you guys about one of my new favorite books of all time, Strange Sally Diamond by Liz Nugent. Sally Diamond is a neurodivergent woman in her 40s who is survived by her adoptive parents. Her mom died when she was like in high school, and at the start of this book, her father just passed away. She was always told by her adoptive parents that they found her in the forest and they took her in, and she's somebody who takes things very literally. She's just always accepted that to be true, no further questions asked. She has no memory of her life before the age of 7. So she's just remained living on this farmland with her parents. She really struggled in school and got bullied. People called her Strange Sally Diamond because she was different. And now as an adult, she just really keeps to herself on their rural area, their farmland that's a little bit out of the way, so they don't get a lot of visitors or people nearby. When she does go out into the world to like go to the shops and stuff, she pretends to be deaf so that people just don't talk to her. Since her dad was dying of pancreatic cancer, he knew this time was coming, and he always joked with her, just put me out with the trash, like don't spend a lot of time on it. So she does exactly that. Word gets out of what she did with his body. She begins to attract a lot of media attention, and she was on the news when she was younger. There's people who knew about her tragic past, and they start coming out of the woodwork. She is getting a lot of positive and negative attention, and then one day she receives a package in the mail from somebody who she may have known in the past. Once things start to unfold, this book is really hard to put down and look away from, but there are also some really traumatizing scenes in here, some things that happened to this girl and people around her when she was younger that are just so hard to stomach. But at the same time, it's like you grow to learn why this character is the way that she is and appreciate her for how she is. And that's something that I really liked about this book. I fell in love with this main character. I feel like this is one of the best character developments that I've read in a very long time. Since Sally is so different and has her like neurodivergency, she is brutally honest in her interactions with people, and it all comes from a place that has like no ill intent. She doesn't understand why the world is so complicated and why people socialize the way that they do. She just sees everything to be very flat and just like say what you're going to say, act how you're going to act, just be a genuine person. And that's something that I really liked about her. Like I said, there are some scenes when you're diving into her past that are just really disturbing and unsettling. So if you're somebody who is sensitive to certain things, I would definitely look up your trigger warnings with this one, but this book is amazing. It is so freaking good. I loved it. Earlier this year in February, I read and gave 5 stars to The First Day of Spring by Nancy Tucker. So this was a recommendation. If you like The First Day of Spring by Nancy Tucker, you'll probably like Strange Sally Diamond by Liz Nugent, or vice versa. These are some of my favorite books of all time. The people who recommended this one to me based off of this one, you were so right. And if you guys have any more recommendations like these two, please let me know. This is a very niche genre that I really love, just like childhood trauma and seeing people into their adulthood and how it's affected them. Like, I love this. So to end off this video, we're just going to be talking about what my plans are for next quarter. And next quarter is a brand new year. So I did finish the challenges that I set out for myself this year, one of which being the Buzzword cover and title challenge. I do plan on doing those again next year, and I'm so excited. I'm already picking out books for these prompts. This year was my first time participating in Screaming Color by Gabby Reads, and she does a couple of those a year, so I definitely want to be doing those again. That was so much fun. Of course, I am going to be doing Summerween and Winterween, and I do plan on vlogging for those. So far, we just have the dates for Winterween, which is in January. It's on January 9th to the 15th, so I will be vlogging my reading experience for that. And it's like a vampire theme, so the prompts include things that have to do with vampires or other occultist stuff. You don't have to do vampires if you don't want to. And then like bloody covers and things like that. So I'm also building my TBR for that week. And then another book that I'm going to be reading, I think this might be one of my first books that I read going into the next year, will be Too Old for This by Samantha Downing, because I have this checked out from my library and I'm going to have to return it very soon. So this is probably going to be one of the first books that I read in January. And also another book that is very high on my TBR is That's a Great Question I'd Love to Tell You by Elise Myers. I absolutely love Elise Myers, and I got this for my birthday from Jazz. It is a signed copy, so I'm very excited to read this book. I'm going to be reading it immediately, like as soon as I have the time. Also, another video coming in January will be me redoing my bookshelves. It is a complete mess right now because I have been getting so many new books. I really need to go through it and like reorganize it. For Christmas, Jazz got me a new bookshelf and it is the same one that I have, so I'm just going to put them right next to each other and reorganize the entire thing. So stay tuned for that. I will be making an entire video on that. That is a wrap on Q4 of 2025. It was probably the best quarter of the whole year. And I am so looking forward to 2026 and what I have got in store for the upcoming year. But as always, if you guys like this video, please don't forget to like it, subscribe if you haven't already, and comment down below if there's anything you would like to say. But until next time, I will see you guys later. Bye.